Welcome to SmithWeekly Discussions, an occasional program for our members of SmithWeekly Research. Please note this program is a private discussion and everything contained herein is for entertainment and educational purposes only. With that, we hope you're in a comfortable position, along with your favorite beverage, to enjoy the discussion. We remind our audience to examine our show notes attached to each of our shows to better understand how our program functions. Before we get into our discussion, we want to say thanks for questions coming from our audience at SmithWeekly, including Jeff S., Jared W., Mark R., and Scott S. On the program today is a returning guest, back to update. Mr. Bruce Smith is with us on the program. Bruce is the president and CEO of Radius Gold. The company is focused on gold, copper, and silver exploration in Peru, Mexico, Guatemala, with various projects, including the Tierra Roja copper project in Peru and the Amalia gold silver project in Chihuahua State, Mexico. Radius Gold is listed on the Toronto Venture Exchange under the symbol RDU and also on the US OTC markets under the symbol RDUFF. Bruce, welcome back to the program.
Thanks, Andrew. It's nice to be back. Nice to talk to you again. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Bruce, Happy New Year to you. And we're already well into 2025 with a month behind us here, just about. Just because we are getting into 2025, why don't we start off here? We'll get to a couple company updates here in a moment, but I'd like to just get your general thoughts on, the junior natural resource markets for 2025. You see a lot of different sides of things. You're on the operational side, you're on the geology side. You always have an interesting view on these things, but how do you see things going? Sentiment and where investors should focus for 2025. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm very excited about the start of this year because I've got a new project that I'm going to start drilling soon, and hopefully we're going to wake up an old project that's been sitting there for a while. So it's a good year for us for Radius Gold. In terms of the markets, there've been junior exploration and mining companies have been beat up for a long time. There's no happy CEOs out there very much, except for the odd few. So I think that it can only hopefully get better, but there's not a lot that I can do about the markets. So what I can do is deliver good results. And that's what I'm most interested in, is having a good pipeline of projects ready to go. And I think even in a bad market, if you deliver something great, you're going to get rewards for it. So I tend not to worry too much about the markets because I've been doing this 35 years. And if you're lucky enough to have a boom cycle in that time, that you push out good results, then you'll get, better rewards. But it doesn't matter so much. You just got to deliver something spectacular and you'll be rewarded. So I'm looking forward to that, but can't really control the markets. But if you think about long term, what I'm very excited about, or what I think is the best metal to be in long term, is probably gold and copper. Copper particularly because demand and is growing all the time, and exploration success is falling dramatically from year to year. So copper is going to be great long term. Silver is very spiky. They have these runs in silver where it just goes crazy for a few years and then drops off, and you've just got to be prepared for that run. And gold is always good. People have been saying it's going to break out for years, and it's a strong price now. If you deliver a good gold project, you'll get respect for it. And with Radius, we have a finger in all pies, I would say. We've got a great copper project. We've got a great gold silver project. So, we're positioned to take advantage of the market, but you can't take advantage of the market unless you've got a great discovery. So my job is to get a great discovery.
Yeah, there's a few things. I think that 2024 was pretty rough, and as we know, there's always a turn at some point when sentiment's down in the dumps. So it's just a matter of staying solvent and making some decent choices during that time to take advantage of that. And then of course, you guys are set up as a company that's exploring for both base metals and precious metals, so you have some potential exposure. And then there's always that companies that have good drill bit success, there's always that reward, irrespective of what the market is doing. And we've seen that the cash flowing companies out there, obviously with the gold price and copper price where it is right now, companies who have a good production profile, a good cost profile, are certainly doing well, and some of them are getting rewarded. Some of them are certainly way better off than the junior markets. So we have that portion of the market where people can take a look around as well. So lots of stuff happening out there, and I do think no shortage of some events here to come, and we're seeing some changes in various fronts already. So we'll see how things go in the coming months. Well, I want to get into updates on Radius Gold here. The company is focused on the newly acquired Tierra Roja copper project in southern Peru. This is an exploration project. You guys acquired it about September 2024, so a few months ago. Of course, since you guys have expanded the land package, Bruce, talk about the progress there, the work being done on the project, what the next steps on work items are to support eventually testing those copper targets on the project.
My sort of expertise is in early stage exploration, discovery. That's where I like to work. And I would say that we're a bit agnostic about which kind of deposit we go after. The company's called Radius Gold, precious metals is our focus. But if we see something compelling that I really love and believe is going to be a winner, I don't really mind which metal it's in. So I was looking for a new project, and I got sent an old document about this. It wasn't very well prepared, a project in Peru, a copper one. And, I first looked at it, didn't really like it, sat on it for a month, and then for some reason went back to it, extracted all the data, plotted it up on my own kind of space and information, thought, that's interesting. That district that we're working in, Arequipa, as you may or may not know, Peru is the second biggest copper producer in the world. And the province of Arequipa in the Nazca Desert is a small area. It's only about 300 kilometers long by 100 kilometers wide. That small area produces 60% of Peru's copper. So there's more copper comes out of this small belt than the entire United States or Canada. And we acquired this new property. The guy who owned it was an old retired geologist, Luis Montoya. He just turned 83 yesterday, but he's still sharp as a tack and loves work. He doesn't want to stop. We've employed him full time. And Luis had worked for more than 50 years in copper exploration, and it's some pretty important projects. He was with Panama Cobre in the discovery there, with David Lowell, and was director of geology for Minsur, the largest Peruvian mining company. So the guy's got tons of high-level experience. He retired, but he had the idea to look for sulfates. And in the Nazca Desert, in that part of Chile and Peru, where these big copper deposits are, when you get copper sulfides and you oxidize them in the desert, they create a cap of sulfates that kind of hides what's underneath. Most of these deposits down there, the big ones, Cerro Verde and things like that, they're leached at surface and they have enriched blankets underneath, and at surface you find these sulfate deposits. So Lewis went out to try and find one. He did. He had a local partner, and with a bulldozer they pushed some roads through it, cut through this sort of surface cap, and discovered copper underneath. They took 650 samples. It was widespread copper across the property in high grades. But his partner unfortunately died, and Louis sat on it for a year while he cleaned it up and got it legally back in action. And then we met, Louis and I. And so we've put the project into Radius. We've got an option to acquire it 100%. I flew out, had a look. There's extensive copper oxides all over it and high grades. One of the things I like about when I'm looking at a new project, I like to see high grade. And there's plenty of high grade on this. There's individual channel samples of 20 meters at 2%, 35 meters at 1.2%, individual samples up to 10% copper. And the copper anomaly, geochemical anomaly, covers about 700 by 800 meters. So it's significant and never been drilled. and in the world's best copper district. So we acquired it. There was a bit of work to do. We expanded, first of all, we expanded the footprint by acquiring claims beside that were open for staking. And we're advanced in negotiation to acquire some more. We don't really need it because the target's fully covered, but it's nice to have that additional ground around if you discover a mine, you want as much here as you can get. We've done that and we're going to get some more. And the next step was to map it in detail and then drill permit it. So the entry price, Luis is a great guy. We get along well together, obviously, and that's why we've done this deal. I think there's a lot of personal trust there. But his thing was that he wanted a good company to come in and fund it, operate it, and we don't really have to pay much until we make a discovery. So it's only $25,000 on signing, $25,000 when we get the drill permit, then it's another year before we have to pay them any more money, and they're relatively small steps, $100,000 a year, but $6 million in total after about 5 years. So we've weighted all the payments towards making the discovery, and Luis and his partners understand very well that there's not much money in it for them unless they make a discovery, but we believe that there's a high chance of that, and so we're all in it together. We have just completed the detailed geological mapping. We started out actually doing all the regional mapping and sampling it just to make sure that we're not missing anything. And we completed all that, and now we're doing the detailed mapping on the project itself. I got all the hand-drawn maps from my team out there yesterday. We have more digital, and we're drill permitted. In Peru, one of the things that people worry about a bit, or has been a bit of a hassle in Peru, is permit times. Now, if you're trying to get a drill permit on a new project and you have communities and private land and things like that, it can take 2 years. But the good part about this project that we acquired, Tierra Roja, is that it's federal land. There's no communities, no inhabitants. So we can permit in 3 months. And we're very close now. We got the water permit a couple of days ago. The judge signed off on that. So I think we're about a month away from having full drill permits. There's nobody lives on the site. It's 20 kilometers off the Pan American Highway. It's a drive-up drill target. So I think we'll be ready to drill in a month or two. So it's all, it's looking great.
So you guys have just about permitting wrapped up here. Obviously, for the exploration side of things, the community work, local services, and things you need to utilize there in Peru. What about nearby operations, nearby exploration, perhaps, nearby mining operations? Talk just a little bit about the region.
Well, Arequipa is, a mining province that produces probably 4% or something like that of the world's copper, 4 or 5%. So it's in the top. Peru is in the top in the world, and most of it's coming from Arequipa, and it is desert. Like, I've been working in a lot of deserts. I've worked in the Sahara, in the West Australian desert, in the Black Rock Desert. I've worked all over the world in a lot of deserts, and I've never seen anywhere so dry as this. There is not a plant or a person out there. So that's a good thing in some ways, because there is no community really to consult with apart from the municipal towns where we're going to buy our water 20 kilometers away. We have to inform all the people, but the communities there are mining communities. That's how they live. They're not growing anything down there. So community relations are no problem at all. There's nobody that could object because nobody lives there. It's on federal land. We just need to negotiate with the local towns to buy water. I mean, that's for drilling. We would buy water in and truck it to site. But if we were going to, if there's a big discovery, those mines down there, they pipe water from the sea. So there's no problem for water. So community relations are good. In the district, there's, 10 giant world-class copper deposits. Cerro Verde, Tocopala, Tia Maria, La Tapada, Zafranal. These are all big copper deposits. So there is all the infrastructure that you could ever need. Drilling rigs, mining engineers, geologists, everything you can imagine is available. And we were just speaking before, there's a new discovery right beside us that kind of can indicate the potential of what Radius has. There's a company called OzQuest, listed on the ASX. They are 20 kilometers away from us. They're a company kind of like us. They have a few projects. They've been beat up by the market. They had a low market capitalization, around about 10 million, pretty similar to us. They released some drill results 3 days ago, and they hit on a project close to us, 350 meters more or less at 0.27 copper, and then another hole 188 meters at 0.28 copper, and they went up by 350%. So they went from a 10 million market cap to a 38 million market cap in 3 days. Now, those grades might appeal low to some people who are used to Canadian discoveries or high Andean discoveries, but you've got to remember the type of copper we're looking for is oxide copper deposits, open pit, heap leach, oxide. Up in Canada, in the Golden Triangle, or in the high Andes of Ecuador, the likes of SolGold, or in Argentina, most of them are sulfide operations, so they have to crush and float, which is an expensive process. The cheapest deposits in the world to operate are oxides. So you dig them up, free dig almost, and leach. And a lot of these deposits in Arequipa have what they call enriched oxide blankets. They're a bit leached at surface, and you're looking for that high-grade oxide blanket underneath. It usually sits about 50 meters underneath the surface. So that company, OzQuest, have hit some big oxide intercepts. They've done extremely well. They're up, like I said, 350% or something. And they didn't, interestingly enough, they didn't have much high grade anywhere near the surface. If you take a look at their surface sampling, the best they had was a few samples in the 0.2 to 0.6 copper range. And if you look at our project, we've got oxides, but really high grade. Like I said at the start, 20 meters at 2.1%, 35 meters at 1.25%, and high grades up to 10% copper and oxides, and across a wide area. So we have the potential for much better results, I would say, much higher grades. So it's going to be an interesting year. I'm really looking forward to getting drilling.
Good to get orientated for the region you're in, because we know Peru can be quite difficult depending on where you are. Sounds like you guys are in the proven area of Peru and should be relatively straightforward with respect to regulatory and community, as you highlighted there, and probably the easiest jurisdiction for you guys as a company right now, I would suggest, maybe compared to Mexico or even Guatemala. So I appreciate that orientation, and then also some of the activity there nearby. What do you see on targets? Because you've been on site already. This is very preliminary, early days, but I'm sure you've probably already selected a few targets that you're thinking of testing out here soon. And what do you think the timing would be for that initial testing this year?
The targets, it's pretty easy. It's a walk-up drill target. I could have drilled it the day I walked onto it, to be honest. But the more you study it, the better your targeting is going to be. We've done some mag, and that's certainly helped us. Ground-based mag is pretty cheap. I would like to do a couple of lines of IP. We'll probably start that next month. The drill permitting will come in the next month or two. And we have some decisions to make around how to finance this. And that kind of will influence our targeting somewhat. So first I'll talk about targets. The zone is about 700 meters across, or 800 meters, east-west, 700 meters north-south. And we'll put some big, deep, 500-meter deep holes. Or actually, you never know about how deep those holes are going to be. You can do all the targeting you want and everything, but I was involved in the early stages a bit with Soul Gold. I helped them a little bit. Soul Gold is, well, your listeners might not know it all, right? But they made a massive porphyry discovery in Ecuador. And the guy who was the project manager, Jason Ward, was one of my best friends from years and years ago. And I helped them a little bit, not much in Ecuador, but I stayed in close contact with them right throughout the time that they were drilling. And Jason's first holes, he rocked up to that project, and it was grassroots discovery. And his first hole was more than a kilometer deep, almost. In the first 5 holes, they were drilling really huge holes with man-portable rigs up in the Andes. And I said to him, and they didn't have any money. They were really, really broke. I said, Jason, you got to have enormous courage, or I didn't use that word, but, so we don't. You got to have enormous balls to drill a hole like that, What made you drill that deep? First up as a junior company with no money. And he said to me, well, we just started drilling, and as the hole went down, it just got better and better. So why stop? Why stop? If the hole's getting better, just keep drilling. And I've taken that to heart because there's a change in the way that companies drill things. 35 years ago, when I first started drilling, nobody drilled deep. I just looked at a project in Australia, for example, with sort of 500 drill holes, and one of them is deeper than 200 meters, so 500. And there's so many old projects, you look at them and you think, there's not a hole here that's deeper than 100 meters. But nowadays, people are drilling deep holes first up. And I would suspect I'm waiting till we're going to run IP resistivity, because the copper is, should be chargeable. We should be able to see the copper halo. And that will guide us on depth and positioning. I think I already know just from looking at the surface where we want to go. And I would say that we're going to drill some deep holes across the system. But if we get into the sulfide body, the sulfides would probably occur in this environment somewhere 200 meters below surface, 200 to 300. So if we get into a sulfide porphyry under there, we're not going to pull the pin on those holes. We just keep drilling. So we could end up with some very deep holes. But I would start with, in mind about 500-meter deep holes, cutting right across the system. We will probably do that. We'll get cranking on our IP resistivity next month. Then our permit should come in, and we'll be drilling, I would say, within 3-4 months, everything organized.
With that, you touched on financing. That was something I wanted to ask you about. You guys did do a small capital raise a couple months ago. Where does the company stand now on cash? And with the work planned, obviously Tiera Roja is the focus area for 2025 for the most part. Just talk about how far where you see the current cash carries, and then what you think the financing needs will be in 2025. It sounds like there'll need to be some type of a financing to fund this exploration effort at Tierra Roja.
Well, we have multiple options to fund this, and we're considering them all, and it won't be probably until the last minute that we make the decision on how to finance. And that might not be dilutive. Our board absolutely hates diluting the shareholders. So we have enough money in the bank to drill it today. If I started in the next month and we drilled, we could get through drilling on our own, but then we would be out of cash, and that is not a good place to be. So we would prefer to raise some cash. We have some shares that we could sell that could do it. Just depends a little bit on the market, on timing and everything like that. We've got some shares available, $500,000 worth of stock and 2 other companies. And so we could sell those, although that's unlikely. Simon, our chairman, really believes in those companies. So that's one possibility. The other possibility, and we'll get into that, a discussion about Amalia. Amalia is our project in Mexico, and we're in discussions with Pan American about what to do with Amalia. So we would like it back. We would really like it back. We have 35%, Pan American has 65%, and we'll, after this conversation, we'll get into what Amalia's like. But Pan American also wants it. They do not want to give it back to us. They want our 35%. And if they get our 35%, we'll get cash, and hopefully cash in an NSR is what's on the table. And so we might do it that way. We might take cash in an NSR from Pan American and drill Tierra Roja. Or we have some offers on the table at the moment from a private investment company to joint venture Tiera Roja, 51-49, something like that. Or, if we can get the stock up a bit, we could raise a bit of cash. So we've got sort of 4 or 5 ways to finance. And just depending on the market, on timing, whichever one of those looks most attractive at the time and least dilutive and gives Radius shareholders the best bang for the buck, we'll take that option. But we could use any one of those options to finance this.
Very well. Just with that, you talked a little bit about Amalia there. Let's switch gears over there and talk about that in Mexico, Plata Verde. It sounds like that there could be something happening here as far as potentially utilizing the arrangement with Pan American. Just talk about any other plans for the projects in Mexico this year.
We've got this project in Mexico called Amalia. So it was a grassroots discovery by us. The markets were terrible at the time that I made that discovery, and we decided the best way to finance at the time was through a joint venture with Pan American. Pan American actually came to us and they liked the project, so we decided to do it with them. We had tremendous success. We were doing very well. I believe it's going to be a great mine one day. The last drill holes about 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, the last drill holes we did were spectacular. We drilled 10 meters true width at 10 grams gold and 850 silver. There's 66 holes in that thing. And we don't have a 43101 resource out because we're a minority partner. But, for example, Joe Muzamda's team had a look at it from Exploration Insights, and they put out a number on what they thought the resource was, which was about, at that time, about 500,000 ounces, and that didn't include some of the new discoveries we've made. And so we know that there's a substantial, I know what it is, I just can't say it because, it's not 43101, but there's a substantial resource there. And it's open in all directions. Unfortunately, what happened to us was that Pan American, in its wisdom, decided that it was going to do a merger with Yamana. They merged 2 big mining companies. They ceased exploration. And in the time that they ceased exploration, the Mexican government also decided in its vast wisdom that it would completely change the mining law. That was Lopez Obrador. He introduced a new mining law that when you read it, you just think, oh my God, this is a disaster. And so that project's been on hold for a while, but Lopez Obrador has resigned. There's a new or left government come to the end of his term. There's a new president of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum, and Claudia is making a lot of noise in the right direction, that she's going to improve those laws, and there's a lot of optimism in Mexico right now. And Pan American have come back to us, and they're interested in acquiring our part of the project, our 35%. We have been trying to acquire their 65 for quite a long time, and I don't know where that's going to go. We are negotiating. Simon, our executive chair, is leading that. He lives in Vancouver, where Pan American are located, and a lot of Simon, he's the founder of Gold Group, Fortune Silver, and a dozen other companies. And I would, of course, like it back. We are trying very hard to get it back. And if we do, it'll be a great project. If Pan American gets their way, we hope for a big chunk of cash and an NSR, which will make our shareholders happy as well. But I think the time for that to move is in the next 6 months. The Mexican laws are looking to be better, I would say. There's been some successes in the courts in defending our rights. So this year we hope to see that project advance. There's 3 targets there, 2 on granted licenses and 1 on an application. And there's fantastic hits on every single target, and resources look likely on all targets, and there's a lot still to drill there. It's those epithermal systems that's in Chihuahua and in the Sierra Madre, those epithermal systems in the Sierra Madre and northern Mexico, like Palmarejo, Ocampo, Pinos Altos, and First Majestic Silver, San Dimas, they go down a kilometer. They have vertical extents of more than a kilometer, and that's unusual for epithermal gold silver deposits. And Amalia is like that. From the top of the system, there's a vertical elevation difference of over a kilometer, and there's mineralization throughout that kilometer. So it can be a giant deposit. It's a really impressive system.
Very well, Bruce. Appreciate that. And we'll see what happens with the Mexico projects you guys have going there, and appreciate the insights there as to the negotiations. And looks like there'll be some form of an outcome later on this year on that. Any comments on the Guatemalan projects at this point?
Yeah, well, we also have a great project in Guatemala called Holly. And, Guatemala is a difficult country. And why did we decide to go back there? I worked in Guatemala 25 years ago. I was actually married there 25 years ago. And at that stage, we never had any community relations problems. We found a mine, actually, a small one, couple of 100,000 ounces. It was sold, and life was good in Guatemala. But the government has become more and more difficult, and the people have become communities have become more and more difficult to deal with. But going back 3 or 4 years, they got a change of government, and Pan American invested nearly $1 billion to buy a company called Tahoe. And Tahoe had a deposit called Escobal, and Escobal is one of the world's largest primary silver deposits. It was constructed. Tahoe ran into community relations problems, and the mine was halted, and Pan American bought them out for $1 billion, basically. And then Lundins went in to buy and refinance a company called Bluestone. And they spent, I'm not sure exactly how much, let's say more than 100 million on that project. And the project is called Cerro Blanco. We were actually involved in the discovery of both. Simon found and sold Cerro Blanco to Goldcorp 30 years ago. And so these two big, the Lundin Mining family and Pan American, were piling money into Guatemala, and we owned like 150,000 hectares of licenses between the two projects. And we had this great target called Holly. We drilled Holly, and we had some fantastic success. At the moment, it's a small epithermal system. In the core of it, in the upper part, we were getting results like 10 meters thickness at 10 grams gold and 500 silver. In the lower part of it, the last holes we drilled were a couple of meters wide, but 50 grams gold and a kilo silver. So fantastic numbers. And we also had community relations problems there. But we still have a drill permit. The main problem with the communities where we were in Guatemala was that we're sited in the location where the project sits between 3 communities, and they argue about who's going to get the benefits. So it's a slow process of trying to convince everybody that there's enough benefits to get to every community. And our team has been there a long time, and we've been working hard. And our partners there, it's a 60-40 joint venture with Volcanic. Our partners have just announced that they're going to go back and start drilling again. So it's a great target, geologically complex communities, but I think we'll get there. I mean, they're poor communities. They've been running. We had all of our workers when we down tools a couple of years ago, and just thought we'd wait to see how things evolve with the new government. A lot of them set off walking for United States, and that's not a sustainable outcome. They need jobs and infrastructure and things like that, and we could provide that. So I think we're going to go back there in the next 6 months and start drilling again. I would suggest that, depending on the market again, our partners will finance, and we might dilute from 60-40 to 60-30, 70-30, something like that. So Radius won't have to finance that unless we, sell Amalia and have the money to participate. Our partners will fund it.
Appreciate the update there. And yeah, there's always a lot of prospectivity in Guatemala, unfortunately, until the right policies come into place, which it takes a period of bad policy, Bruce, I think, to understand that maybe we should look at this again and change our position and find a way to work together to bring some of these operations online, because they're a tremendous windfall for the local community and, of course, the country as well. So appreciate the thoughts
People are
there. And
hungry there. People don't have work. They're desperate for work. And we're employing, 30, 40 people at a time on that project. So that's the key to it. You've got to deliver to your communities. They don't have water in the villages. They've got, in the particular village where we were, there's a single well that runs dry at noon every day. They pump it dry by noon. And that well is providing water to about 1,000 people. And there's NGOs busy telling everybody, we're going to contaminate the wells, which is just a complete lie. I'm a water engineer. I've got a degree in water engineering from the university in Holland. My wife is Dutch, and I went back to school there when I first met her 20 years ago. And so I know what I'm doing. And we could substantially improve the livelihoods of those people by helping them deal with their water issues, and give
yeah,
them jobs. And it's that sort of thing that you've just got to slowly work at it, and we have been to get that community acceptance. And as I've said, the communities themselves are accepting. They sort of argue between them about who's going to get the most benefit. So we've tried to work on saying, well, there's enough here for everybody if we're all patient and give it a try. And I think
yeah.
we've got the social license back there now. We have the drill permit in hand, and our partners have just announced they want to start drilling again. So I hope to see some good results. The last drill hole results geologically were spectacular. 1 meter at 250 grams gold and 7,000 silver. It's just phenomenal grades
Right.
and open to expansion.
It would be good to have a healthy exploration sector there, and these issues, even with mine construction, don't help. And there's a lot of good deposits there that are already existing. And just imagine the tens and thousands of jobs that would come in, and then of course the indirect jobs if some of these deposits would actually get underway and become a mine, the windfall for the community and the government. But you mentioned some of these NGOs. Some of these NGOs are no doubt anti-human. They come acting like they're trying to do a service, but the reality is they're quite destructive in their policy and propaganda that they put out there. So I appreciate how you look at Guatemala here, and hopefully we'll get some continued progress. And I'm sure it'll take some time, but nonetheless, hopefully in the right direction. Bruce, any other things you wanted to cover off here as far as other goals for the company this year, as far as things you want to accomplish? Anything on the awareness front that you guys will be working on? Maybe you'll be attending some of the conferences coming up, industry conferences. Anything else you wanted to add?
Next week, I'm actually going to put out a project tour online of the Tierra Roja property and the copper property that we're going to drill in Peru. So I'm just putting the final touches on about a 15-minute walk through that project, videoed all the outcrops and things like that. So that will come up online. Um, one of the things to watch out for is we're always finding new projects. That's what I love to do. So every 6 months or every year, I find a new project. Sometimes I don't like to joint venture projects very much because I don't like to see them go, but I'm always finding more projects than I know how to deal with myself. So I have to bring in a partner to help me. And we've got a couple of new projects in the pipeline that we're doing some due diligence on. So I hope to see some news flow coming out of those. And yeah, we'll see news flow coming out of Peru for sure in the next week or two, with that project tour and with advancing on those drill permits and with completing our final targeting with the IP resistivity. So we'll be very active in the next 6 months, hopefully with a lot of news flow and a lot of new and interesting things coming out. I don't personally have a lot of conferences that I'm planning to visit. We usually go to the Rural Investment Conference in Miami later in the year. That's one I attend, and some of the metal investor forums, but I really like to spend most of my time in the field looking at rocks and looking at discoveries, because you can promote as hard as you want, but it's discoveries that are going to see your share price go up. And I'm the company's leading geologist as well as its promoter. So I try to spend as much of my time as I can on making a discovery that's going to make our shareholders happy.
Well said. And it looks like upcoming catalysts here would be some potential for success there at Tierra Roja. Well, let's leave it there for now, Bruce. And for potential investors who are listening in, the company has a market capitalization today of about 9 million Canadian dollars here. Interesting price point ahead of some of this work that's coming up. Why should Radius Gold be considered within the institutional, family office, and retail investors' portfolio at this stage?
You only need to look at OzQuest beside us. They're a very similar company. They had a market cap that was very similar, a bunch of projects, and they drilled those 2 holes and hit 348 at 0.26 copper, and they trebled their share price in about 5 days. So they went from under 10 million market capitalization to 38 in 5 days based on those drill results. And if you look at our geochemistry at surface compared to theirs, it is an order of magnitude better.
Always encourage the audience there to take a look also at those results and do a little bit of comparison work here now that Bruce has brought us on to some of the successes happening nearby there. Bruce, how can interested parties get in touch with the company?
Through our website is the best way, radiusgold.com. And there you will find links to all our videos. We have a Twitter, LinkedIn, WhatsApp, all the general social media things. We put our stuff out on there as well. But the best pathway is straight through the website. My phone number's on the corporate presentation. You want to call me anytime. I always talk to shareholders or anybody who wants to. You could just look at our corporate presentation on the website. My phone number's there. Call me up. But radiusgold.com is the main way to find us.
Bruce, we thank you for the time here today and looking forward to having you come back to update, hopefully with some results here in the coming months. Good luck with work at Radius Gold. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. I really appreciate your time, and thanks everybody for listening. Hope you have a successful 2025.